Okay, so what you're seeing in front of you right now is just the basic equipment that you would need to make watercolors from home. And it's quite easily transportable, I think. The only awkward thing is this big piece of glass, this sheet of glass. So I'm just going to move it out of the frame and show you why I have this non-slip mat here. So I'll just move that out of the frame, and then the mat here, as you can see, is poorly stained from all the pigments. So the non-slip mat is, I think, an affordable, necessary item for making watercolors, because when you're working on a large surface, you want to ensure that that surface is not going to move in any way whatsoever. So I'm just going to grab the surface itself and then move it on top of the non-slip mats. These non-slip mats are really cheap. I think you can get them in longer rolls and then you can just cut them to size. When I first started making watercolors, I had a smaller glass panel and no non-slip mats underneath, and I ended up with the glass panel just shifting all the time with the pressure of me moving the pigment around. So that is why I believe that the non-slip map is a particularly useful and affordable piece of equipment. It ensures that you're able to continue to mull and mix without anything moving anywhere. It would be a really unfortunate event if you ended up with pigment all over the floor or all over yourself. So that is the first item, which is the non-slip mat. On top of the non-slip mat, you have the glass panel. The glass panel itself is a necessary item for mulling pigments. You can use marble as well. It's essential that you have a reasonable surface area. If you are only making small batches of watercolors, you could probably get away with half this size. In my post, I will include the exact measurements for this glass panel. So my glass panel that I had prior to this was way too small, and I think it might have even been maybe a third of this size. And so as I began making bigger batches, it became necessary to have a larger surface area. And on the surface area itself, I can also pop things around it at the same time. So this is essentially a piece of glass, and we have just popped, my husband and I have popped sellotape to make sure that the edges are not sharp. So just for safety precautions, that's why the sellotape is around there. It's masking tape. So that is the glass panel. And that is a necessary, absolutely necessary piece of equipment. The next necessary item are your glass mullers. So when I first started making watercolors, I actually didn't have a muller. I had a spatula. And I was working with pigments that didn't really require much mulling anyway, such as the mica pigments, the shimmer pigments. They don't really need mulling. The reason for that is it actually breaks up the mica particles, and then it means that the smaller the mica particles, the less reflective, and the less reflective, the less shimmery. So to ensure the integrity of the mica paints themselves, mulling isn't necessary. It's perfectly fine to actually use this with the binder. Anyway, that's a how-to, not a what you need. So these glass mullers were both sourced from Jackson's Art, and I have the link on my website for these. There's not really that many places you can source glass mullers internationally at an affordable price. It was just something that I just had to invest in the end. So the glass muller is exactly that. It's a piece of glass, and its job is to mull, which is to disperse the pigment evenly into the binder. At the same time, it does slightly grind, but it's not specifically supposed to grind. It's supposed to just mix and disperse the pigment evenly. So this is the smallest size, and this is my most recent muller here that I absolutely adore. And it's, as you can see, a lot larger. The larger the diameter, basically the more area that's going to cover when dispersing the pigment, and I think in doing so that reduces the amount of time slightly that you're actually mulling. Anyway, that's a how-to again. So anyway, equipment, glass muller, anything that is flat and glass is ideal. So that is the glass muller there. Palette knives are another necessary item for mixing in the pigment, as well as once the pigment is mulled, grabbing the pigment and then using a half pan or a full pan to pop it into. And there are lots of different palette knives that you can source. These ones are just cheapies, and they have been really reliable and very sturdy, and I quite like these two sizes. You might have your own preference for the type of palette knife you work with, and that's fine. So those are another necessary item that you can use. Another item that is important is the mask here, to ensure that with some of the pigments you're working with, you are protecting yourself from inhaling some of the very fine particle pigments that you're working with. Some of them are extremely fine, and some of them are such as the cadmium based pigments are not ideal at all to be working with all the time. So that is just a cheapy but good quality face mask. Besides that, you will need something to put your watercolors in. You don't have to put your watercolors into half pans or whole pans. You can use shells, bottle caps, plastic bottle caps. There's so many different things that you can use to put your paints into, as long as you're putting your paint into something, so that when it dries, that you can, go to it when you need to. So some form of container of some kind, natural, unnatural. And then, of course, measuring spoons are very handy for not only measuring how much binder you want to scoop out, but also pigment that you're working with when you're scooping out the pigment. So I always keep measuring spoons handy at all times. So besides that, the only other two things that I haven't mentioned are pigments and the binder itself. And that's it. Hey, thanks for watching my video. I hope you liked it. I hope that you learned something new today. If you have any questions, send me a direct message through Instagram, or you can contact me through my website. The link is in my bio. It is staykiwicolors.com. Have a great day.